A difficult week ends with one of the most promising performances in a long time. Tottenham can now look ahead to the Carabao game on Thursday and the tough Old Trafford visit next weekend with some positivity. I'll be taking you through what I felt I learnt from that Spurs 3, Brentford 1 victory. Meanwhile, Johan Lange and his recruitment team have been scouting out more young star boys, and elsewhere in the Premier League, Newcastle are bracing themselves for bids for Alexander Isak and may have to find a new sporting director. All this and more on today's episode of Daily Premier League News with me, Barnaby Slater. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Please do press that like button if you haven't already. Helps get this video seen by more people. And do subscribe to the channel if you're not, and press that bell button as well. Then you'll get a notification whenever I make you a video. And become a member. Really helps me to make this regular content for you. Only £1 a month. Details in the description box below of how you can do that. But let's get started with a couple of these young wonder kids that Spurs are reportedly to have been interested in. Starting with the 19-year-old Turkey forward Semir Kilisoy. Kiliksoy maybe. Let me know in the comments if you're Turkish, you know how to pronounce that. He's playing at Besiktas, and also a bit closer to home, Southampton's 18-year-old starlet Tyler Dibling. He actually scored for them in the Premier League at the weekend. So Spurs continuing really their strategy of trying to dig out basically the young talent from around Europe. I guess that Chelsea aren't trying to buy. It's as simple as that. Chelsea will try and get the most expensive ones, and then Spurs kind of trying to sweep up underneath that. But Dibling particularly, I have to say, I've seen a fair bit of this season. Looks like a good young talent, and I think it is worthwhile Tottenham trying to look at the lower echelons of the Premier League and the upper echelons of the Championship for this young talent to bring through as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, let's get back onto that really important victory versus Brentford at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium at the weekend, 3-1. I want to talk you through some of the things that I really felt I learnt from that performance. Of course, it was absolutely vital we got the 3 points. It'd been a very difficult week. Although we got the win against Coventry, a lot of you will have seen in my video, I was very critical of Ange Postecoglou's team selection for that game. But a win is a win. We're in the pot for the next round. But it was vital we got those 3 points against a very difficult, very well organised, despite their injury problems, Brentford side. I do rate Thomas Frank as a manager. I do think he'll be on the list in future for Spurs are looking for a new manager somewhere down the line. So yeah, like I said, very important to get that win. I want to start in terms of things I felt I learned by talking about the really elite pressing that I think we put in for that game, led by Dominic Solanke. And that is something that maybe I didn't even give him credit for enough when we signed him. Just how hard he works off the ball, really tightening angles on Flecken, their goalkeeper in this game, making him kick it places he didn't want to kick it, making him hit mid-range passes when he didn't want to. And so many times, especially in that first half, because of the angles that Solanke was making on Flecken and then making him kick it to one fullback who was being pressed by Johnson, who would then have to play a more difficult pass than he wanted to into his centre half. James Maddison picking off balls, and that's how Solanke's goal actually came about. And yeah, that was an enthusiastic press led by Solanke and followed up ably by Son, Johnson, Maddison and Kulusevski. And Kulusevski, who as well is a really top level presser. So having him in that 8-10 role alongside Maddison doesn't only offer us something more creatively than when we have Pape Matar in that role, but also he's just a far better, far more talented presser. Now you may say to me, what is a talented presser? Surely pressing is just about running towards where the ball is. Well, actually, I think pressing, if you're a really elite presser, a lot of it is about actually trying to foresee where that ball is going to go and trying to get in the minds of the player on the ball and think, what would I be trying to do next if I was in his position? And then reading that. And Kulusevski and Maddison, especially actually throughout that game, did it so well, picking off passes, really reading where the game was going to go. So yeah, very impressed with that. And then also just in terms of how important it was for Dominic Solanke to get off the mark for Spurs, to get his first goal. It took Richarlison a lot longer, didn't it, to get a Premier League goal, certainly. I know he got a goal with the header in the Champions League. That was important for him. But to get off the mark in the Premier League at home, gets the monkey off his back. And I've been impressed with him. He's hardly played any games for us, obviously, because of that injury he picked up after only 15 minutes against Leicester. But his back-to-goal play, his hold-up play, really impressed me. I actually think he's a better player holding the ball up than Harry Kane was. Harry Kane, obviously, Absolutely incredible at everything else, but one of the few kind of maybe 6 out of 10 elements of his game was sometimes he'd get muscled off the ball a little too easily in terms of his back to goal play. I think actually Solanke is a lot better at that. He's really strong, really kind of plants those 2 feet, and sometimes if he feels the touch in the back from the defender, he'll go down and win an important free kick to take the pressure off, and then often he'll just use that strength. And there were times against Brentford when there were 2 or 3 players, Brentford players around him trying to nick the ball off him from various different angles, and he was able to use his strength and then get an important pass off at the same time. It really actually adds something to our game that we did not have last season, which is that ability to hold the ball up and therefore keep the pressure on the opponent in the final third. And it stops many, many transitions. Of course, the way that Ange plays, we're still giving away chances from the transition, but I think it is happening less so when Solanke is playing, and that is important. Now I just think we need to make him more chances. He had the chance for the goal, which he put away well, and then there was really just one other chance I can think of, which was, I don't know if you remember, Rodrigo Bentancur, who I thought had a decent game. He made a breakthrough and really drove at their 18-yard box, and actually felt a little clip of his heels and went down. And whilst everyone was appealing for a penalty, the ball actually broke to Dominic Solanke, who got a quick shot away, and it was well saved by Flecken, who had narrowed the angle. So they were the only kind of 2 chances that I felt we made for Solanke. We didn't really get him in behind at all. It was Sonny who was kind of making more of those runs in behind, had a few opportunities there. But once we can make Solanke more chances from crosses and getting him in behind, and he's a good finisher in and around the 18-yard box, I could see him potentially, hopefully, scoring 15 goals or upwards in the Premier League this season. Wanted to also talk a little bit about Destiny Udogie. I feel like he is getting stronger and stronger by the game. He played pretty much all of the Coventry game, didn't he? And then he played all of this game as well. And after his big injury during the summer where he wasn't able to play in the Euros, then it's felt like he's been a little bit slow to get up to his full speed of fitness this season. But I felt he had his strongest game yet for us against Brentford. He was driving forward so directly, and actually he was kind of played in a slightly different role. I thought he didn't really play in the inverted 10 as much. He was getting more outside of Heung-min Son on the left, making those overlaps, and that was allowing Sonny to be in his kind of favoured position, the kind of inside left half space, and that is why Son got a few shots off in that favoured position. And I think actually he would have scored. There was one particularly where he was in the absolute favoured positions of Sonny, where all he wants to do is open the ball up, open his body up and curl it into the far left-hand corner. But the defender, I can't remember if it was Collins maybe, he knew that that's what Son wanted to do, so he blocked off that far corner, and as a result, Sonny had to whip it in towards the near post, and he just got kind of almost struck it a bit too well, and it went straight down Flecken's throat. But that could be an interesting tweak to keep an eye on, whether maybe Big Ange has seen that we're not getting Sonny into his favoured positions nearly enough, and so has said to Destiny Udogie, when you drive forward on the outside nearer the touchline and allow Sonny to kind of come inside a bit more, and then we'll have more shots on goal from Sonny, and we know that if he gets those chances, he will score numerous goals for us this season. So a little tweak to keep an eye on. Let me know in the comments what you think about that. Is that something I've noticed? Is that something that's really there? And if so, is that something that really allowed Destiny Udogie to play better as well? Because like I said, I felt he had his best game for Spurs in quite a while. I want to talk about James Maddison and just how impressed I was with him on Saturday. Specifically and particularly him taking the ball on the half turn in central midfield throughout the game, often with 3 or 4 Brentford players pressing him. He'd take it on the half turn, and where the opportunity arose, with a little drop of the shoulder or a little feint, he'd drive through them in midfield and really open Brentford up. That was Maddison's best game for Spurs in a long time. He was playing slightly deeper than Decky Kulusevski, getting the ball on the half turn off the back 4 or off Vicario, and then regularly getting past that press and setting Kulusevski free, who particularly one in the first half where Kulusevski had Brennan Johnson in on his right. He laid it into him, and unfortunately just the pass wasn't perfectly weighted, so Johnson had to take a half step backwards rather than if it had been put in front of him. I think Johnson might have scored another one of those brilliant kind of Harry Kane-esque right foot shots into the far left-hand corner. But Madders' reading of the game, like I've said earlier, was just absolutely expert throughout. So many times he intercepted passes, and his link-up play around the opponent's 18-yard box, particularly with Kulusevski, was lovely as well. So many 1-2s, little triangles he played, passes around the corner, and very, very difficult for anyone to defend against. So I really like that little partnership that Kulusevski and Maddison are working on together. I think it's allowing Sonny to get more space in the game as well. I think Brennan Johnson played better as a result, and we need to keep James Maddison fit this season, because obviously he played beautifully like this for the first 10 games of last season, but then the injury against Chelsea really set him back and he never really made it back to that top form. But he is starting to do that now. I'm going to talk about Guillermo Vicario, of course. I want to start by saying I love him as a keeper. What do you think about Vicario? Let me know in the comments. Do you think he's good enough for Spurs to take us to the next level? I love him as a keeper. I think he's great. The only weakness at the moment is with that kind of slight madness he has in his head whenever the ball's in the air from a set piece or a cross. I hope that he saw, and I know he saw actually, because he did an Instagram post about it yesterday where he just put the emoji of a guy like shrugging his shoulders. Having watched Ederson for Manchester City get blocked off by the Arsenal players for Gabriel's goal against them. It was exactly the same as what happened to Vicario against Spurs, and that's why he did the emoji with the shrug on his Instagram stories. But I am in agreement with Roy Keane here, who said in punditry yesterday, and I should also say, Gary Neville did not go in on Ederson the way he went in on Vicario. He really has taken like a disliking to Vicario's ability in defending corners and set pieces. But Ederson had exactly the same problem. And Roy Keane said after the game, he said, it might have been at halftime, but he said, you have to, as a keeper, you have to come out with violence. And I know that's a really strong term, but I actually like it. I've been saying how aggressive Vicario needs to learn to be coming out. But I completely agree with Roy Keane, actually. Peter Schmeichel, who Roy Keane played with for years but didn't like as a person, Peter Schmeichel was just violent and aggressive when coming out to catch things. And Roy Keane was saying yesterday, and I agree, Vicario and Ederson in this example, they have to say basically to the strikers with their body language, if you want to get in the way of me, go for your life, but you're going to get hurt. They have to plough through them. No penalties will ever get given against these goalkeepers for ploughing through attackers who are trying to block them. So just be aggressive. And I don't just mean when the ball's in the air, before it as well. Come and make a few little movements in that direction with aggression and show those defenders that I'm going to make the first move towards this corner. And Vicario has to learn that. But look, Vicario did make some great saves, very important saves in this game, around a couple of little madness moments he had. The handball outside the box for one, of course. And there was one where he tried to do a little Cruyff turn, basically, didn't he, on his own goal line. But he made some important saves, and I just think there's a little bit of maybe fuzz in his head at the moment. He's a little bit mind fuzzed because he knows that oppositions are just going to put the ball on his head, and he's got to make that first movement and show aggression. He's a big boy, he's got strength, so just use that power and really show them that if they're going to try and block him, they're going to get injured. It used to be back in the day, and you can't get away with this quite as much these days, but when coming for a cross as a goalkeeper, you were taught, lift your knee up, and then anyone who wants to come for it with you, they will get a knee in the ribs. Now, I'm not saying that Vicario can just go around kneeing people or elbowing people, but he can use his strength earlier and really show them that he is in charge. And I think he has to learn how to do that. I really do. He's not going to have penalties given away against him, and because Premier League referees just don't do that. The other thing I wanted to just talk about before I get on to some quotes from Ange Postecoglou and our captain Son Heung-min is just the importance of Brennan Johnson's performance, not just because of the difficult week he had, but also that goal he scored from the right foot across into the bottom left-hand corner, like Harry Kane used to do all the time for us, like I spoke about earlier in this episode. That could become Brennan Johnson's bread and butter. That could be the thing where we know if we get it out to Johnson in those positions where he can drive at his fullback, he can just take that one touch, get a little yard out and hit it into that far corner. And what will then happen if we continually get him into those positions is that then defenders will see it on their videotapes before they go into games, and they're like, well, we've got to block that off. And if the defender who is defending against Brennan Johnson takes that extra half step over, that makes it easier for Brennan Johnson to then play the ball inside to runners coming in. So either a cross cut back or just a little pass into an inside runner, and that will allow better chances coming to Spurs. So I think Johnson can just keep on replaying that over and over and over, and it could be really huge for Spurs. I was impressed with his performance. I'm pleased for the kid. He had a terrible week, but has come back beautifully against Coventry and now against Brentford. As I said, Ange Postecoglou gave some quotes after the game. I think it's worth going into them. He said it wasn't an ideal start to the game, obviously, but to be honest, it was like it never happened. Talking about Brentford's early goal from Mbeumo, obviously. He said the boys just sort of went at it. That's what we wanted to do today. We knew that Brentford, they're going to be pretty aggressive with and without the ball, and we love that part of the game. We thought if we really brought our own energy and intensity like we know we can, with and without the ball, we could cause them a lot of problems, and we did that. We were relentless the whole game and fully deserved the win. Absolutely agree. He was also asked about Dominic Solanke. He said Dom worked his socks off. He was gone at the end. He's still building up fitness, but I know he's going to provide so much for us in that central position. All strikers love goals, so it will be a great moment for him having scored, especially at home. Completely agree, like I said at the beginning about Solanke. So impressed with him. He was also asked about Brennan Johnson. He said, Brennan has had a top week. He scored in the cup to get us through, scored the winner, and he scored a fantastic goal again today to get us ahead. And he was a real threat all the way through. He had a bit of a tough period last week, and sometimes it gives you perspective about what's important. And what's important to Brennan is that he's a much-loved teammate, and like I said last week, he works hard every day, and I've got no doubt he'll make a big impact for our club. I've said it on these videos before, I'll say it again. Brennan Johnson is a raw, young player who has scored so many more goals and made so many more assists for both Tottenham and Nottingham Forest at this stage of his career, only 23 years old, than so many players who've gone on to have incredible careers in the Premier League have done. He is ahead of the game. And when players are young, when they're raw, they are not able to do the right thing every time because they don't have the experience to back it up yet. He is far ahead of the game, Brennan Johnson. We need to support him. There is no need for Spurs to always have to have a scapegoat on the pitch. And now that like Eric Dyer is gone and Pierre-Emile Højbjerg is gone, Spurs fans are looking for someone. Well, not all Spurs fans, you will have seen in the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium how supportive they were of Brennan Johnson. It's more like the Spurs fans at home on Twitter are always looking for someone as a scapegoat. But Brennan Johnson is not the right player to go for, and I don't think Spurs should be looking to go for someone anyway. Ange Postecoglou was also asked about Tottenham's rocky start to the season. He said, I ignore the tide and just keep swimming. You need to embrace the struggle. You don't get success just by everything rolling out perfectly. There are times when you've just got to roll your sleeves up and keep going. Whether that's swimming against the tide, running up the hill, going against the wind, you can use whatever metaphor you want. That's great. That's what you need. But I ignore it because I don't think that's going to help me in any way. What's the best process for me is to stay steely-eyed on what I think I need to do to get us to where we want to. It's all the same. It's been a constant in my career, but I don't think I'm in a unique space. I keep saying to people, show me a success story and I'll show you a struggle. It's not something that's unique to me, it's universal. People forget the struggle and look at the end bit, but you need to go through that. I completely agree, and I think it's madness, actually. I think it's absolute madness that people are saying Postecoglou is not the right man for this club, because actually the way that his career has gone and how he's had to work himself up from nothing all the way up to winning things in every league that he's been at is exactly equal to what Tottenham are having to do. We've won nothing. 2 League Cups since 1991 and that's it. So we're starting from a base of nothing, really. I mean, I know we had the good years under Pochettino, but then because of the appointments we made after that, Mourinho, Nuno and Conte, and the type of players they wanted to bring in, the type of football they wanted to play, we basically went from up there under Pochettino to nothing again. And Postecoglou knows that, and he mirrors what Tottenham Hotspur need. Let me know in the comments if you agree with that. But that's what I think. We need to give him the time, the patience, and the players to get the belief into the club that we can start to challenge. And you've got to say, you know, after that incredible draw between Man City and Arsenal yesterday, that's what Arsenal have had to do. They've had to build up from nothing. They had to strategize, and they were patient. And Arteta, to be fair to him, I don't like the guy, but he's done a great job there. And the first 2 seasons were 8th and 8th. And Postecoglou is ahead of the game, just like Brennan Johnson is ahead of the game, and we've got to stick with them. I do think we need a statement win, a big away statement win at one of the big clubs, and hopefully it can come at Old Trafford next week, because that will calm fans down. But I love Postecoglou's words. I love the football we're playing. I love how front foot we are. And I think we just need to support him. Just some stats here to back up what I was saying earlier about some of the performances. James Maddison against Brentford, 1 goal, 3 chances created, 43 out of 49 accurate passes, 8 passes into the final third, 2 out of 4 accurate long balls, 4 ball recoveries, amazing, 10 out of 18 ground duels won, and 4 fouls won. And I have to say, I'm going to give some stats on Son Heung-min here. I have to say, with the eye, at the time, I didn't think he had the greatest game, but he was getting in better positions for him, like I mentioned earlier, and his stats back that up. Played the whole game, 2 assists, 7 chances created, 32 out of 37 passes completed, 2 passes into the final third, and 2 ball recoveries. So well done, Sonny. I think he will appreciate, like I said earlier, getting into those little half spaces on the left. He did a little interview as well, started by talking about competing for the Europa League this season. Sonny said, "I think every competition we're in is a competition worth challenging for. To me, every competition, every year, is an opportunity that I want to challenge for. We're preparing well. It's a good competition. I think we can play well in it if we take it seriously. The first step is always important. I hope we can get a good start on Thursday. I'm not 18 or 19 anymore, so every season to me is as valuable as gold. Every competition is very important and precious to me. Whether it be Europa League, Carabao Cup, the FA Cup, or the Premier League, I'm giving my absolute everything for every game I play. The way I prepare and the way I live every day is focused on each one of these games. I hope to rest well and condition myself well for Thursday so that I can deliver another good game and victory for Spurs." Yeah, I love that from Sonny. Completely agree. What kind of team do you think Big Ange will pick on Thursday? Do you think he'll mix and match it again? It's Qarabağ at home, so you'd think we'd have enough strength to turn them over. But Qarabağ have played in European competition every year for many years now, so they're experienced in these kind of games. I don't think we can take it lightly. We have to get some points on the board early in this mad new Europa League group. Son Heung-min was also asked about Brennan Johnson receiving that abuse on social media. He said, "The situation with Brennan has just been sad, really. He's a young player, and it's so sad when someone's feelings and performances are affected negatively by what he had to suffer off the pitch. But Brennan was able to battle it because he's someone with a strong mentality, a strong heart. He's a very, very nice kid and works harder than anyone. So I think every player was so happy to see him score and perform well today. I hope Brennan really enjoys today and has the happiest day anyone can have." Great captaincy from Sonny there, just building Johnson's confidence up and really backing him and saying what a nice kid he is. Son Heung-min talked a little bit about battling external distraction. He said, "There was never someone in our team who distracted us when we were working hard and training hard. We're playing for a great club and we're playing and battling against great teams. There's been a lot of outside efforts to distract and split our team, but we should never let ourselves be affected by that." I think he's talking about the press and social media in particular, isn't he? "The most important thing is to keep doing what we've been doing, to train hard and work hard for victory on the pitch. I've been a professional for a long enough time now to know that it's always the same story. I've no intention to let myself become distracted. So I think it's important for me to set an example to the younger players so that they can also battle distraction. At the end of the day, there will always be someone distracting you. Players should never forget their efforts and their achievements. If you start doubting about what you've been working hard on as a professional player, it not only hurts you, but also the team. In this situation, you have to always firmly trust yourself. I trust in this team completely. It will be important to battle and get through this situation." So yeah, he's talking about the last few weeks when the press and some social media, some fans, some abuse has been against Spurs because they haven't won every single game in the league. And Sonny, I think, being very smart, discussing that there are ups and downs and you have to go through it. And I'm hopeful that we can have another really successful week this week, win against Qarabağ, and then hopefully get that statement victory. Some news came out of Spurs over the weekend that Hugo Vicario, who obviously is a presence on the pitch, doesn't mind shouting at his defenders. If you remember earlier in the season, he had a big old go at Lucas Bergvall, didn't he? Well, he's been added to the club's leadership group this summer and has become its 4th member alongside Son, James Maddison and Christian Romero. And now the players, as a result, look to Vicario as one of the key voices amongst the team. That's news that Alistair Gold brought. What do you think about that? Let me know in the comments. Vicario's 27, so he's getting towards the peak of his career. He's got experience. And yeah, we've all talked about needing more leaders on the pitch, haven't we? So maybe that'll be an important appointment for the leadership group that will lead us to a successful season. Let's hope so. Other news, Wilson Odobert, who obviously got that hamstring injury against Coventry. According to L'Equipe in France, he should be out till about mid-October, which isn't too bad, is it? We're talking about only maybe kind of 3 weeks or so. So let's hope that is the case. Meanwhile, over in South Korea, our new 18-year-old winger, Yang Min-hyuk, he's joining us in January, of course. He scored another goal this week for his club. He now has 9 goals and 5 assists in the South Korean top flight this season, and that is his first season in full professional football. He looks a very exciting young player. Let's hope he can bring some pace and pizzazz to this Spurs squad when he comes in January. Before I go into some other Premier League news, just wanted to talk about something happening over at Southampton, which is that Kyle Walker-Peters the ex-Spurs fullback who can play on either side. He is refusing to extend his contract with Southampton. His contract runs out in June 2025, and Spurs were looking at him this summer because he's a homegrown player, he's a club-trained player, and he can play either side. So watch this space. That could be an interesting one for Walker-Peters to come in as potentially the spare fullback to play on either side, alongside Jed Spence, Destiny Udogie and Pedro Porro, especially as you've got to assume that Ben Davies is probably having his last full season for Tottenham. Guys, just before I give you this other Premier League news and gossip, please do press that like button again if you haven't already. Please do press it. It really helps me get seen by more people. Please do be a subscriber. I bring you regular, daily Tottenham Hotspur and Premier League news content. And you can listen to this on the podcast platforms as well, be that Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Just go there, search for the Spurred On podcast and give me a subscribe or a follow. Really helps me. Thanks so much. Let's start at Man City. They apparently are firmly in the mix to sign Germany's Jamal Musiala next summer, but face competition from Real Madrid. Musiala is only 21, of course. Over to Liverpool, they're progressing with talks to get a new contract for Luis Diaz. If you remember, Diaz was on Tottenham's list, but in the end we missed out on him to Liverpool, and as a result got Decky Kulusevski and Rodrigo Bentancur. Do you wish we'd got Diaz over the line there and then therefore didn't get Kulusevski and Bentancur, or do you think it's been a better deal for us in the long term anyway? Staying at Anfield, Trent Alexander-Arnold came out with some interesting quotes over the weekend about his contract situation. It runs out next summer, and he says that the ability to win trophies will be key to his thinking when it comes to either extending his contract at Liverpool or perhaps moving elsewhere. I think he's going to go to Real Madrid. And he said that basically my minimum is that I will be at Liverpool this season. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if he goes on a very, very impressive free transfer in the summer to Real Madrid. You could see Trent as a fullback at Real Madrid, can't you, with all the Galacticos there. Over to Newcastle, Paris Saint-Germain apparently keen on Alexander Isak and are willing to pay about €100 million, with Newcastle valuing him at that. That's £83.8 million. I think that sounds cheap for Isak. I think he's an unbelievable player. Also, apparently, Newcastle will sack their new sporting director, Paul Mitchell, the ex-Spurs sporting director, rather than part company with Eddie Howe if tensions between the pair continue. They're not getting on well at the moment. And there does seem to be something a little amiss at Newcastle. They're not playing well. They've had a half-decent start, but they got absolutely thumped by Fulham at Craven Cottage over the weekend. And my flatmate, who's a Newcastle fan, said the performance was very disappointing. Over to Chelsea. They're looking to make more transfers, of course, and want to buy Lautaro Martinez from Inter, who Tottenham were looking at a few years ago, weren't they? Apparently, they're willing to offer Mudryk, Chukwuemeka or Badiashile in exchange for the 27-year-old Argentina striker Martinez. Over to Everton, Dominic Calvert-Lewin's contract runs out next summer, and they're looking to tie him down to another one, but Newcastle are showing interest in Calvert-Lewin, who's 27 now, and it would not surprise me if I were Calvert-Lewin, I would be not signing a new contract and looking for a move, because Everton are in the doldrums at the moment. According to some reports, former Chelsea and Brighton manager Graham Potter would be interested in the Everton job if Sean Dyche doesn't get some wins soon and is relieved of his duties. And final bit of news, the Premier League, along with the Europe's top other leagues, are trying to sort it out so that next summer's transfer window closes before the start of the league season. They tried that for a few years, didn't they? But then it stopped. I think it would be best. Let me know what you think. Should the transfer window stop before the season starts? Or maybe there shouldn't be a transfer window at all. There never used to be. It only came in about 20 years ago or so. It used to be you could make transfers all the way up to kind of March or April. I'd like to bring that back in. That would be exciting, wouldn't it? Anyway, let me know what you think about that in the comments. Thanks so much for watching this edition, guys. I hope you had a great weekend. Please do press like. Please do press subscribe. Become a member. It's only £1 a month. Really helps me. All the details of how in the description box below. And have a great rest of your Monday. Cheers.